What's your biggest regret from your teenage years? So determined to impress my classmates that I would stretch the truth so I could brag about myself. Now I realize most of them saw through it. If I could only go back, I would slap some duct tape across younger me's mouth. There's a guy I'm still friends with to this day that, back in high school, liked to brag about the girls he'd slept with. Then, he got a steady girlfriend and all the bragging stopped immediately. He talked about it, but didn't brag. Years later, he confided in me that first steady girlfriend was who he lost his virginity to. I told him that I knew, that we all knew. He seemed shocked and asked how. I said it was obvious to us, because of how his attitude changed. No one ever called him out on it, because we didn't want to embarrass him. He was a little embarrassed anyway, but relieved because it came out, in private, to one person, and realized he didn't have to bring it up to anyone else. I wish that I had taken mom up on her offer to teach me how to cook during those teenage years. It would have been so helpful, both during college and beyond. It was a missed opportunity, because she's a great cook and a natural teacher. I used to have a deal with my mom starting before age 10. I could cook anything I wanted, but I had to eat it. So I made a lot of cookies. I didn't learn much about cooking until I was 22 and moved to Maui and lived in a big house with a lot of surfers. Damn, did I see some outrageous grind coming out of the large kitchen in that house. Surfers are athletes who burn a lot of calories, plus most of them worked in restaurants. So there was a lot of cooking know-how in that house. Somebody would make fresh bread nearly every day. We didn't share meals, but did make extra food to sell to one another. I wore a fedora to prom, and prior to prom I had asked someone out and took the rejection really badly, said a lot of stupid shit on social media, and acted out when asked about it. Also, back when it was a thing to add random people on FB, I used to post all sorts of corny white knight one-liners. Cowardice. I was so unsure of myself and awkward. I know that all teenagers struggle with this, but as I look back now from my 40s, that kid in high school had so much going for him, he just didn't know it. The more he cared about fitting in, the less he fit in, and the worse people treated him. Girls were like an alien species and the future was terrifying. But it didn't have to be. I wish I had taken more risks. I worried about getting in trouble too much. I missed out on some fun because of that, and tried to play catch up when I was 19, which led to me going a bit too hard through my 20s. I'm okay now, successful and doing well. But there's lots of things I did in my 20s that I might not have done had I got it out of my system in my teens. I'm just lucky things turned out okay for me 31 now. When I was 14 I poured ketchup on our back porch and laid down with my head next to it right as my mom came home from work. She came outside screaming and I laughed. She beat me with her shoe and I was grounded for the weekend. Now that I'm a parent I realize what a real dick fucking move it was and the terror she felt. Lol, I was changing my mom's oil once and found this old rubber eyeball from some Halloween party we'd been to in the glove box. It was super realistic looking. I came inside going like ow, and holding my eye. My mom is like, what happened? And I slightly open my other palm with the fake eye. She flips the fuck out. I laugh and throw the rubber eye at her. She looks confused then furious and started hitting me with an oven mitt while my sister is falling off the couch laughing. Another time, we were shopping at this discount grocery store and she found this gallon jug of Ernst and Julio Gallo wine on sale. She's like, oh, this is a great cooking wine, and puts it in the cart. We get to the check stand, the checker scans the wine, and I blurt out, Mom, are you coming home tonight? My mom looks at me, horrified. The checker looks at me, horrified. My sister, without skipping a beat, says, with a completely straight face, the neighbors are starting to ask some embarrassing questions. Seasoned, I didn't even plan this. We're just that good. Not being more selective about the friends I made. I thought I was a real loser, which I was, but largely because I had that idea in my head to begin with, and I felt I really couldn't be too picky. As a result, I was sort picking from a social slush pile of people who would use me, were generally emotionally unstable, or were too wounded to really be a good friend. It turns out, making social connections is work. You can't just be interesting. You have to show people you are, and they want you to show you are interested in them as well. and flaunting how kind and giving you are is a bit pathetic, because being kind and generous is a minimum requirement for a friend. I thought I was being shunned, but mostly people were just busy with their own lives and friends and barely knew I existed. Quitting golf. It was my one natural talent that I could have made a living off of. When I was 12, after playing for, maybe, 2 years or so, I already had a single-digit handicap and was beating guys that had played for 10 plus years. My teachers had pegged me to be PGA material. I found this out when I ran into one of them a few years after I stopped taking it seriously. He sounded very let down to hear I had stopped. Now when I play I still sort of have it, but I'm nowhere near as good as I was back then. I hit maybe 4/10 of my shots like I used to, with a lot of swearing in between at the range lol. You live and learn. If you're actually really great at something, stick with it. Otherwise you'll end up looking back wondering what could've been. On a positive note, makes for a good time at Top Golf. When I go with people who don't know I used to play. Not teen, but I was 9 in a new country. I got lost coming out of a shopping mall and ended up by a busy highway intersection. There was a pedestrian tunnel under the road, and as I approached it, I heard a girl screaming and a guy yelling shut up, and looking back she was definitely getting raped. I was already scared because I was lost, and I looked to the road and cars were zooming by. I knew I should help, but there was no one around, and it took me an hour and a half to walk home, as I'd spent my money for the bus. Poor girl, I can still hear it all vividly, and I would like to go back and be able to do something. Even if I'd just screamed into the tunnel he probably would have split. I didn't do anything interesting. I went to the smart person school, did my extracurricular shit, let my parents, mostly my mom, bully me into doing the whole Eagle Scout garbage, and hated my entire time there. Ended up going off to college and didn't know how to set boundaries. Wound up being incessantly harassed by a gay guy that tried to get me drunk and fill me up regularly, so I dreaded going out anywhere on campus because he was always find me and attach himself to me. Having some independence now is great, aside from the crushing sense of loneliness all the time. On the bright side, since then I've started doing shit like going to concerts, getting tattoos. Currently I'm having a good time with the new motorcycle I've got, and I've got a job I actually like, but I feel like I wasted a lot of time trying to accomplish a bunch of shit, and it ended up being pointless, and I just hated it. Honestly, I wish I was just myself. I'm a girl, and definitely felt pressure to fit in with the other girls when we had nothing in common. I felt like a burden, and at times, it was a very toxic group. I was miserable. All my friendships were superficial. None of them have lasted since I've graduated. I wish I just was myself and had the guts to hang out with the people who made me happy, the people I was in concert band with and the geeky guys in my grade. I was always happy with them. We always got along, but I felt like I was intruding. Now I'm older and it's harder to make friends, and I'm alone. I will always regret this. Working too much. Had a job ever since I was 14 years old. I didn't need the money since I still lived with my parents, but I worked my butt off. Definitely made money, but I feel like I sacrificed being a normal high schooler. I don't really remember doing much of anything fun in high school, and I always felt left out of stuff because I couldn't go anywhere with my friends because I was working. It got to the point where they stopped inviting me to stuff because they would just say, oh, he's probably working. I find it funny that a lot of people are saying that they had too much fun and should have worked harder when my situation is the exact opposite. I'm in my early 20s, so maybe I'll appreciate all my working later in life. I tried for months to get a lesbian girl to date me. I wanna fucking die every single time I think about it. Edit. Full story. I had met this girl back in middle school. Let's call her Liz. I had recently moved to a new school when I met Liz. She was a part of a small group of people who would play tag every day at recess. All of us were kinda outcasts and loners who had nothing better to do. I become good friends with everybody in that small group of people, including Liz. After a couple months of hang out with them, I did develop a crush on her. I, being me, would wait until high school to tell her about my feelings. She told me no repeatedly, and I kept pestering. I even kept pestering after she told me that she was a lesbian. We stayed as friends, but all I can think about whenever we talk is how much I wanna deck my younger self for being an asshole. I told family and teachers that I wanted to be a hairdresser after school finished and was told that was a dumb choice and that I could do better. I was one of those kids who could always naturally get top grades, so people insisted I was too smart for a career like hairdressing. My mistake is, I listened and didn't go into hairdressing. Family and life events led me to drop out, move away, and through a failure of birth control, I ended up having my first baby at 18. I worked every low-paying shit job that would have me, just to keep a roof over our heads and food in our bellies. The baby is 33 now and it all turned out well, but there were many years of scraping and utter poverty. If I had followed my desires and been a hairdresser, I would likely have stayed in school and had a decent career to support my family in my younger years. God knows why I listened to a dumb reason, like it's a waste of your intellect. I can tell you the jobs I ended up working were a waste of my intellect, and I had nothing to fall back on. Silly thing to rant about, but it's the one thing I do regret from those years.